Video games, perhaps unfairly, are usually valued on their antagonists, and boss battles will usually rank highly amongst players as their favourite experiences in a video game. After all, there's nothing quite like being able to rise to a challenge and use everything you've learned in order to take down the big bad who's been griefing you all this time. But that being said, sometimes it's just as rewarding to give these bosses a taste of their own medicine, and by using a little bit of lateral thinking, or even a secret hidden in the game, and absolutely pull their pants down and give them the old mulberry bush bash, if you know what I'm saying. I don't. Yes, beating bosses is fun, but humiliating them after they've made you look a right tit in the past is just that much more satisfying. So let's gather around and take a look at times where you made the final boss look like a total idiot and laughed your way through it all. As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 8 hilarious secret ways that you can defeat video game bosses. Number 8. I scream, you scream, we all cream. Hitman Absolution. So if you're a fan of the Hitman games, then you'll know just how fun it is to plan out an intricate murder involving all sorts of well-timed distractions and accidents. Or, as is the case of my regular playthroughs, a panicked rush of throwing anything not nailed down and then legging it dressed in a flamingo outfit pursued by every armed guard in the area. Either way, bosses aren't something that are very common in this game outside of the final targets, but if you're being really loose with the concept, you could count that each target is a boss of sorts for how they challenge you to think outside the box. Enter Lenny, who is pretty much the only character I know of who manages to make it through 2 missions with old Baldy here on his tail, and this entry revolves around the secret way that you can end him, which makes this encounter all the more memorable. You see, End of the Road contains a scene in which Lenny is digging his own grave as Agent 47 watches on while taking a munch of an apple. You can choose to shoot the man, leave him in the desert, or if you're feeling really creative, then why not shoot the buzzards nearby and ice Lenny in a different manner? If you pick off these carrion, then you'll be treated to an ice cream truck screaming across the screen and ploughing into the man before zooming off into the distance. It's so utterly brilliant that I had to include it, even though it's not exactly that difficult to Mr. Pistol Whippy Lenny into the dirt. Number 7. Bringing nothing to a gunfight. Silent Hill 2. One of the interesting things about the survival horror genre is that it trains your brain to look for certain stimuli and teaches it to react in certain ways. For example, it teaches you that long, empty corridors are often anything but, and that if you see any item at all, then you should hoard it just in case it might come in handy later on down the line. Now, this rule is doubly true for ammo and healing items, and if you've been playing enough horror games for any length of time, you'll usually be so stocked to the gills with bullets and grenades that you'll sometimes finish the bloody game and say, "Oh Jesus, I probably should have used these earlier and made my life a little bit easier." Well, let's try and break that conditioning by taking a trip to the foggy town of Silent Hill, as here the game actually allows you to beat the final boss, good old Pyramid Head, by showing up to the fight empty-handed. If you decided to fire off all of your ammo, then the boss fight turns from a pretty tense scenario where you have to dodge his big whopper into an absolute joke, as it will impale itself, saving you the trouble. Maybe it's the game telling you that James has forgiven himself and thus broken his cycle of guilt. Or maybe it's Pyramid Head taking pity on you by saying, "Well, if you're not going to take this seriously, then neither am I." Number 6. Pay someone else to do the dirty work. Final Fantasy X. If you're a fan of Final Fantasy games, then there's a good chance that you're very accustomed to the concept of level grinding. In nearly every game in the series, you'll come across a route that's blocked by an especially tough boss, or something that requires an amount of rare drop items to get something special to happen, and so on and so forth, so you'll just keep chugging potions and ethers to keep your party fighting fit while you grind for experience. Yet sometimes, depressingly much like real life, all of your problems can be solved by simply paying someone more qualified to do the dirty work for you. After all, who's going to want to get that lovely anime hair all covered in dirt and viscera, when you could just throw bags of gill at our boy Yojimbo over here and have him unleash the beast? That's right, if you manage to befriend this lovely Aeon in Final Fantasy X, you gain access to the most powerful move in the entire game. But it does come at a price. If you've got deep pockets and shallow enough respect for the concept of a fair fight, you can invest a metric shedload of coin into the Wandering Sellsword and have him perform the Zanmato, which is a move that basically kills anything in one hit. Players actually figured out that they could pay him 66,000 gil to have him knock out even the troublesome Dark Aeons. And trust me, that is a very good investment if you ask me. And funny as well. Number 5. Taste My Rod. The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess. Now, this is a fairly well-known aspect of Twilight Princess, but it's something that I just want to include because of how hilarious it is. When you first look at Ganondorf, you probably think that there's a shiver going through your spine because, this guy is huge. He's brought the entire realm to ruin, and he's wielding a chopper that could nick your Octoroks off from a country mile away. And yet, you can make this mean green machine into an absolute farce by wielding the deadliest of all weapons, a fishing rod. With the rod in hand, Link can distract Ganondorf, allowing the player to get a few free hits on him, bypassing the fact that this is meant to be one of the hardest men in video games outside of me when your mum finally dresses up like Wario. Oh yes, baby, shake that money pot, love, let's lick some pennies, etc, etc, and yes, that is my one per list. Some players have actually speculated that maybe Ganondorf is simply confused by the rod because he lives in a desert-based world, but others have pointed out that this could all just be another joke by Nintendo, who have frequently put in humorous ways to defeat bosses, including watering a giant plant and playing tennis with Ganon. Oh, isn't that nice? Number 4, Impala Impaler. Resident Evil 7. Resident Evil 7 is a truly scary game, and I don't mean that just because it's up in your face at all times, but because Capcom truly listened to fans who felt that Resident Evil 6 had dialed up the silly while also not dialing up the chilly willies factor, and who feared that the franchise had lost some of its muster. And a lot of this game's staying power actually comes from its antagonists, the Baker family, who not only become some of the most disgusting enemies that you'll fight in a Resident Evil game, and that is saying something, but also because they are so persistent, hunting you throughout the experience and even busting down a wall or two to make their presence known. Yet, even though they possess regenerative powers and incredible strength, that's not to say that they can't be made to look like total idiots. As early on in the game, when you visit the garage, you'll have the opportunity to impale Jack Baker on a metal pole while he critiques your driving. This skips the usual part of the boss encounter, which sees him pulling donuts in the car hole and potentially damaging you with the vehicle, making it a must for those trying to complete this game quickly or without taking damage. A win-win if I ever saw one. Number 3, Peasant Power, Two Worlds. Now here's the thing, so many tyrants in real life and in fantasy always overlook the little guy, the working stiff who manages to keep their empires from crumbling to the ground. To the person at the top, they're nothing but a filthy, unwashed rabble. But maybe they should take a spin on Two Worlds to rethink how they treat their subordinates, as the peasants in this game, well, they don't mess around. Gandahar is Two Worlds' final boss, a rather imposing figure who must absolutely stink wearing that armor in the blazing sun, but today we're going to be kicking up a different type of smell, that of some deliciously cheesy strats, and just walk straight up to this lumbering oaf and twat him, and then run very fast. Over to that village over there, in fact. After Gandahar releases his late-game fireballs and absolutely ruins you, you might respawn and notice that he's getting his ass absolutely handed to him by the villagers nearby. This is because the splash damage from his attacks has made them go hostile, and because the game has programmed them to be invincible, they will keep attacking until this end-of-game boss lays dead at your feet. So what have we learned from this, Mr. High and Mighty? That maybe you shouldn't swan about thinking you're the dog's bollocks? Yeah, I thought so. Power to the people, eat the tyrants. Number 2, Blasted from a Balcony, Skyrim Dawnguard DLC. Being the Dragonborn is such a blast in both a figurative and quite literal sense, as you can go from town to town solving issues and then screaming at the tops of your lungs in a manner that shakes the very earth itself. In fact, you'd be hard-pressed to find a reason to stand up to the players' characters. The fact that they've seen them jump up mountains, ride actual dragons, and even knock a giant into Kingdom Come should be a clear warning sign to enemies to steer clear. Still though, there are those that seemingly never learn this lesson, and so let's absolutely have their pants down and administer some very embarrassing spankings to, say, I don't know, this guy, Viethur, who can be found in the Skyrim Dawnguard DLC. Now this guy can be a right pain in the ass if you're fighting him properly, as at his disposal he's got a huge array of ice magic that can chew through your stamina and health quickly, plus he's able to pop a few icy minions to tie you up, making this even more of a slog. But you know what? If you're as quick and as cold as ice yourself, you can sprint up to this snow elf and shout him straight off of the balcony. Honestly, watching him tumble to the ground with a surprised look on his face might well be one of the funniest things I've seen in ages. Plus, this proves once and for all that you can, in fact, shout at your problems hard enough to make them go away. Who knew? And number 1, Doused and Downed, Metal Gear Solid 5. And so we close on a game from a series well known for creating some of the best boss battles in video game history, Metal Gear Solid. And I know that a few of you might be wondering if I'm going to be talking about how you can totally drop supply boxes onto Quiet's head during the sniper battle you have with her, but that's not as humorous as what you can do to the man on fire. With a name that quite literally tells you why you should be afraid of him, the dude Ablazed is quite an intimidating prospect at first glance. But let's just do some quick science right now and think of how we'd put out a fire in real life. No, not by trying to get a bigger fire to pick on the smaller one. Come on, guys, think about it. Water! Yes, there we are. So if you've got the water pistol from earlier on in the game, you'll be able to give this squirt a liquid lunch and douse the flames that are all over his body. It's hilarious when you watch such an imposing figure get reduced to cinders thanks to a bloody super soaker, but for that reason, it is one of the very best as well. And there we go, those were 8 hilarious secret ways that you can defeat video game bosses. Let me know what you thought about it down in the comments section below. I hope that you enjoyed that, my friends. And I hope that you have a bloody good day as well, whatever you're getting up to. The things that we detailed on this list were about secret ways and silly ways to defeat video game bosses. And maybe we can apply that to our own lives somehow, because maybe sometimes a problem that seems incredibly daunting and is taking up a lot of our energy, maybe we can't defeat this in the regular conventional ways. And maybe what we need to do instead is take a step back and analyze the situation from a different perspective. Realize what you can and can't control. That is a very important thing to do, and you might be able to find an easier solution to your problems by taking a break and asking for a helping hand. Trust me, there is no weakness in asking for help. As always, I've been Jules. You can go follow me at RetroJ with a 0 over on Twitter. You have been awesome. Never forget that, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.